Your microphone was on. Can you hear us, Larry?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Hello, Larry.
Hello.
Wanted to
Thought
know
I'd,
if anybody was
I
joining
thought
us.
I'd join you to make sure somebody was watching.
Are you, did you have any trouble hearing us?
I did until just now.
Okay. Could you also let me know when to advance the
Live? I certainly will. Should we start again?
Yes, we should.
Yeah.
So
sorry, Larry, we're going to start again since apparently I was miming this. Nobody could really hear it, so you might want to read a book or stare out the window while I bore everybody with this again.
No problem.
All right. And so you'll just cue me when...
Yes, I will.
All right. Sorry about that.
No problem. In 3, 2, and 1. Welcome to Branding for Bootstraps, the module that's designed to help you in your marketing create the brand you want for your brand new business. My name is Gord Woodward. I'll be working with you through this module. I am a business coach who has worked with some 1,500 entrepreneurs around the Pacific Northwest. My particular background is marketing, though I do have experience in operational analysis. And everything that we're going to talk about today is drawn from my experience. We're not going to bore you with any marketing theory. We're going to talk about the realities that face small businesses when they need to create their brand. To use this module effectively, what I recommend, well, first off, is make sure you have the handout. It is called Branding for Bootstraps. And if you don't yet have it, it is available through our electronic system. You might want to pause right about now and go there to the electronic system and get it if you don't yet have it. It'll make your life a lot easier as you go through the module. If you choose not to use it, that's fine. I encourage you to take notes. And as we go through the different portions of the module, feel free at any time to hit pause, rewind to go back over points. But more than anything, there are going to be some exercises that I'll suggest during this module. Feel free to hit pause when you hear the note to do an exercise and maybe do that exercise. And then hit play again and come on back, we'll carry on. In our work then, we're going to jump right into it. If you have the handout in front of you, we're on the top of page 1, Branding for Bootstraps, Building Your Business Identity. And there you'll see some information about what a brand is. And I'm sure you've heard all kinds of different explanations for it, so you're probably relatively familiar with it. Let's just say that from a small business perspective, branding is one of the most critical elements to your success. Branding, as it suggests there, you'll see that second paragraph italicized on the handout, page 1. Branding is the immediate image, message, or emotion that people experience when they think of your business or your products or services. Those are the keys: the image, the message, the emotion. Now, our job as business owners is to be marketers and to recognize the key point is that every brand must be built. They don't happen, they're built, they're driven, and that means we need to take action. And so in our definition, we have to first come up with, well, what is the image I want to create? And then we need to think, well, how am I going to deliver the messages that will help create that image? And ultimately, what is the emotional response I'm trying to trigger among my potential buyers? Now, all of these elements we're going to go through in the module, so we'll give you lots of time to play with them, and you can do it certainly at your own pace. Please remember, your business coaches are available to give you lots of help with this, and I do strongly recommend as well that you do a lot of testing, because one thing that you may discover quickly is that the brand you have in mind may not exactly fit the brand buyers are looking for. And strange as it may seem, we have to be conscious that as a very small brand new business, our resources are limited. So how much money do you have to spend to create this brand? And what if buyers are thinking or feeling they want something slightly different? Are you really believing you're going to be able to get them to change their minds with the limited resources you have? It is possible, I give you that, but it's very rare in my experience. So our job is to know a little bit about the market, know a lot about our business, and then try to create the brand that marries the two as best we can. And so the example I always start off with here is Apple. Most people understand Apple, most people know it and are very familiar with it. Well, the cool thing about Apple, in my view as a marketer, is that they never, not from day one, did they ever say they sell computers. That was not a big piece of the image they were trying to convey. Instead, Apple chose to distinguish itself from all of the other competitors, Microsoft being its biggest one at the time, by saying, we're cool. They didn't say we sell computers and, oh, by the way, we're cool. They left out what they sold. They just said Apple products are cool. Steve Jobs, the guy behind all of this, really saw the future way back when he helped start Apple. And what he hit upon was the idea that technology at that time was beyond a lot of people, but the element of cool would never be beyond anybody, and in fact was what a lot of people aspired to have. So from day one, they told everybody, whatever we bring out, it's going to be cool. And they lived up to it, which is key to branding. You can't tell people, hey, here's what we are, and then do it differently. If you don't deliver what you promise, your brand is going nowhere. So Apple, from day one, introduced computers that were radically different from what was on the market at the time. And they were very cool to look at, very different shapes. They even had colored cases, and you just didn't see that anywhere else. Apple is so good at it over the years that this is why people line up to buy products that they haven't even seen yet. When Apple announces it's going to bring out its newest phone, its newest laptop, its newest iPad, whatever it may be, people line up outside their retail stores the night before the launch because they want to get one of these cool items before anybody else does. That's the power of a brand. The other power that I hope you'll pay attention to is that a strong brand helps you control pricing. Now, many of us going into markets, we're so small that we can't influence price. We think, and I hope you won't think seriously, but we do think about cutting price, and please never do that because that'll diminish your brand. But ultimately, we have to go roughly where our competitors are in terms of price. We can't control it. But when you build a successful brand like Apple has done, you can control price. Compare Apple's prices. Compare them with their competitors. Apple is 1.5 to 2 times more expensive than its cheapest competitor, and they don't blink. They don't apologize. They don't try to justify it. They simply rely on their brand. You want something cool? Buy us. You want just a basic computer that's cheap? Don't buy us. We're fine with that. Those are the key elements of the brand you're trying to build here. Follow Apple's example. Yes, we don't have the money, we don't have the time, they do. That's okay. They started where we started. When they first opened, nobody knew what they were. Nobody knew what their brand was. But they had to take concrete steps. And that's the path we're going to follow in this module today. So keep in mind the 3 key points that are there at the top of the handout on page 1. We are going to today in this module go through the image that you're trying to create, the messages you'll use to convey that image, and we'll talk a lot about the emotional response you're trying to trigger in your buyers. Apple's emotional response is, I got to have that because it's cool. We'd all kill to develop that kind of a brand. So let's start putting you to work. Anyway, at the top of page 1 in your handout, you'll see the words, my brand. What I recommend now is think of whatever words, phrases come to mind that you would like to hear your buyers use when they describe you, your business, your products and services. If you could control them, what would you want them to say? Please hit pause now and take a few minutes to jot down words and phrases under my brand on the handout. Coming back in 3, 2, and 1. Presuming then that you have some words and phrases under my brand, keep in mind that at this point they're simply ideas. You're going to have to do some research before you commit to them. And as with anything else in marketing, I'll always encourage you, don't lock in too quickly. Just because you like it or love it, just because it's, oh, that's exactly what I want, doesn't mean you've got the right brand yet. You need to know more about your market. You need to know about the branding of your competitors, because the worst thing we can do is simply clone a brand that's already out there. If all of your competitors say good quality, the last thing you want to do is make a point of saying good quality. It's already out there. People are not going to accept that you're any different or see any more value in you because you're saying what everybody else is saying. Your brand is no different. So the words and phrases we have then, we're going to start putting them through some exercises throughout this module. And don't be surprised if by the time you're done, a lot of them fall off the list, or that you may have to start again. because everything that's already on your list is out there in the marketplace. Doesn't mean you can't use it, but it means you should think carefully about using it. So we're going to go through some slides, some pointers here, and walk you through some exercises as we do them. So our first slide will be triggered here for the rules of branding, and the first point that we want to raise is that there are key components, starting with the first one here, and that is, in all of your marketing, you need to make sure that you're not talking about you, you're not talking about what you do, you are instead emphasizing the benefits your buyers gain from using your products and services, and using you, for that matter. The key in all marketing always is it's always about the buyer. So if you're in business already, look at your own marketing and see, are you spending all your time talking about what you do, who you are? If you're not in business yet, you've got a chance to avoid that pitfall. Focus on the benefits. And going back to the board then for a second, we'll just quickly illustrate for you what the best phrase of all in marketing I think you're ever going to hear. And we go by the acronym WIIFM, and that's a very, very simple one, but it really illustrates what the customer is always thinking but rarely says. And it comes down to, what's in it for me? That's what your buyer wants answered right away. So your initial point of contact with them then in developing your brand should always be answering this. Don't tell them we sell this. Don't tell them we're located here. Don't tell them we have X number of years of experience. Not yet. That's not the brand that they're going to respond to. But if instead you can emphasize what they truly get, and usually, not always, but in the majority of times, this is an intangible. This is not necessarily something you can taste, touch, or feel, but it is something that will resonate with buyers. As examples, lots and lots of financial institutions promote peace of mind. You won't have to worry about your money, we'll take good care of it. Lots and lots of financial planners promote a happy and safe, enjoyable retirement. They're not talking about anything you could touch, they're talking about what you truly want here, the intangibles. So what I'm going to suggest here is your first exercise in this module is to be thinking like your buyers now. What do they use your products or services for? What's the benefit that they get by using your stuff? Please hit pause now and fill in a little bit of the white space under point number 1 on your handout with some of the benefits that answer this question.
Okay, if you could pause it, it looks like it's broadcasting backwards, and I'm not sure because I don't think Larry's there anymore. I can't.
The writing is coming up backwards?
Yeah, and it's actually audio on the other side. I don't know why I've never seen that before.
Oh, I'm looking in the small little window on my screen, and I think you're right.
I've never seen it do this, so I'm a little bit.
It is backwards.
How
A mirror. I know in photo editing software you've seen it too, the mirror function that you can use, but I wouldn't have thought it'd be built into video, and it still looks like it's backwards to me on the little screen here. How freaking bizarre is that?
I'm just absolutely insane. So there's just, I haven't changed anything.
Oh, it looks like Larry is still there.
It's okay from my side. Okay, so he is. All right, so we're okay.
It's not backwards on your side?
Larry says it's okay.
Oh, all right.
We can start again.
Yeah, here we go, third time.
So we don't start all over from our pause. 3, 2, 1.
So we'll go back over this first slide then? Or the slide?
Just from where you left off.
Oh, okay.
That pause.
Yeah.
It's all good. I'll just edit this up.
Okay, all right, sounds good. 3, 2, and 1. Now that you've listed some of the benefits that buyers may gain from using your products or services, again, as we said earlier, don't commit to them. They're ideas at this point, and we're going to put them through a series of tests as we continue through this module. The more that you have, the harder this is going to be, and that's okay for now, But when you get really serious about this, I would encourage you to sit down and maybe have 2 or 3 different concepts and then really zero in on those ones to try to find the one or maybe 2 points that you really want to emphasize. Trying to tell everybody that you offer 28 different benefits, by the time you get to the 16th benefit, everybody's forgotten the first 15. It just won't sink in. What ideally will sink in then is our second slide. Let's go there for a moment. The second key element in building a brand for a small business is to make sure that buyers do actually understand what it is they're going to buy. It is our job to make it clear to them the tangible. What is it they're purchasing? And this is where we have to be conscious of using jargon, industry terminology that we're all very familiar with, but that our buyers wouldn't understand if we spent 20 minutes trying to drill it into them. Our job is not to dumb things down, it is to make them understandable. So in this particular case, then, going back to the board for a moment, we'll suggest some points around how you're going to define what it is you sell. The first thing to think about is that unlike the benefits that we just looked at, what you sell is the tangible. I always think the best way of trying to explain this is to think of what you would write on the bill or the invoice for a buyer. Nobody writes peace of mind 1 hour. That's the intangible benefit. But people do write 1 hour relaxation massage as an example. So that's a very clear term that people can understand. When you come up with your description, I encourage you to make it a sentence or less. And this gets challenging when you try to sell a lot of different things. That's not really the recipe that I would recommend for any small business. Have a core. What is it you really do? That's what you should be defining in tangible terms for your audience. So with that as your direction, it's time to go to work again. Jot down at the bottom of the handout under point number 2, how would you describe the tangible stuff you sell to your buyers? Can you do it in a sentence or less? Please hit pause now and give that a try. And in 3, 2, and 1. Now with a list of ways in which you can describe what it is you sell, the tangible, let's move on to the next page in our handout, page 2, and talk about the third element of building a brand for a bootstrap, which is simply a business that doesn't have a lot of resources. The top of page 2, we'll go back to a slide, give you the point that you can fill that out with. We've got the tangible, we've got the intangible, so the next part of our message that we need to focus on, point number 3, is to make sure that what we're telling our audience stands out from what all of our competitors are telling that same audience. This can be a little tricky. As mentioned earlier, a lot of businesses promote quality service. So many do it, as a matter of fact, that I bet you don't even notice it anymore. You hear it so much, it's just white noise in the background, means nothing. So what we said earlier holds true here. You are doing your best to come up with points that matter to your buyers that are clearly different from what your competitors are saying. Know that over time competitors may glom onto your message too, but that's okay, because you were saying it first, you may have built the brand and people understand that. Look at Apple. Everybody knows they're cool, and so all the imitators come along, but everybody still says, well, Apple does it best, and they were there first. Apple doesn't lose ground because its competitors glom onto its slogans or branding. So in standing out from competition, there's a couple of things that we want to say here, and it really relates to how you say it. One thing that we'll all have to understand as business owners is that people pay us very little attention. We know our businesses inside and out, or at least I hope we do, but you'll be shocked at how little people really absorb about your business. You could spend 15 minutes laying it all out for them, and I promise you, 2 days later, they probably struggle to remember the business name. They just don't absorb it. So our job is to make sure that when we are trying to stand out, we almost club them in the head with a bat to get them to see it. We have to make it dead obvious. And so in our slide, then, let's throw some more points at you that show you the kinds of wordings you should consider to make it clear to your buyers. One of the first ones I suggest you constantly use, more in verbal discussions than in writing necessarily. If you make everything purple and nobody else does, it's not good enough to say, hey, all of our stuff is purple, because your audience may not understand that nobody else does purple. But when instead you use words like this, what sets us apart is that all of our products are purple. Now you've helped drill that message into them. It's all a matter of the words that you use. So that's a very effective way of doing it. Another point we'll have up here for you, if this is true, this can really gain ground for you. We're the only one, or we're one of the few who can do it this way, or who do this. You might again be the only one who does it, and if you say, hey, we make purple stuff, you know you're the only one who makes purple stuff, but nobody else does. So if you phrase it instead, hey, we're the only ones who sell purple stuff, that registers with people, sinks in. They might actually even remember it and parrot it to someone else if they needed to. And the third thing that I suggest you consider is the phrase, well, unlike everybody else or unlike the other guys, this is how we do it. You're drawing a distinct contrast between you and your competition. Again, you may be purple and nobody knows that. But if you say, hey, unlike everybody else, they're all green, we're the only ones who are purple, now you've delivered a very strong message. So with that in mind, then, it's time to do yet some more work. Under that white space, under this third point here in the handout, please now hit pause and take a couple of minutes to write out some wording that you could use to help explain to a potential buyer why you're different from everybody else. Please go to work on that. Better?
Yeah.
Okay. Coming back in 3, 2, and 1. Now that you've got some idea of how you might describe what makes you different from your competition, let's move on to the fourth point of building a brand for a small business. And back to the slides we'll go for a moment here. Our fourth point, and this may be actually the answer to our third point. What is it that makes you stand out? For some new businesses, that can be a real problem. Well, point number 4 can be the answer to that, and if you'll bring that point number 4 up, please. Oh, where did it go? We'll edit that part out. And should be one more click there. There we go. Oh, sorry, that was figured out. Okay, we'll start that piece again. 3, 2, and 1. Now that you have some idea of the wording you might use to convey the message to buyers, hey, here's how we're different, let's move on to our fourth point in building a brand for a small new business, and that is, going to the slide, make sure that you reflect your personality in your brand. Now, this might actually be the answer to the third point. Sometimes we struggle to figure out, well, what is it that makes us different anyway? We kind of do what everybody else kind of does. Well, take heart. At this stage and at all stages of your business life, there will always be one factor that distinguishes you from every other business on planet Earth. And it is in point number 4. What separates you from every other business is you. I can only buy you if I buy from your business. And so for a new business, this is a key point. We need to let people know who we are. We need to base the business around us. Because ultimately, as you'll know from your own consumer experiences, people tend to buy more from people than they buy from businesses. Look at car dealerships. Nobody likes them. But people, if they've liked the car dealer they dealt with, will probably go back to her. That's just the way people migrate these days. So in putting your personality in, up on the screen, you'll see an example of how the realtor does it here. Now, every realtor on earth has business cards. You've seen them all. Every realtor works for a company, typically. But in this case, what you're seeing here is a realtor who plugs himself into it. Yes, he works for Remax of Nanaimo, but he tells you clearly in his marketing, hey, I'm Charlie Parker, and this is my team marketing on your behalf. And carrying it a step further, Charlie puts his mug in there. He includes another realtor. And if I'm being picky, I'd say don't, because we don't identify that second person, nor do we know which of the two is Charlie, but that's niggling. At least it shows you who you're dealing with. And this is a concept that realtors have understood ever since real estate transactions were first legalized, I suspect. What do you buy when you go shopping for a home? You do tend to buy the realtor, don't you? So all the realtors will always have their name and picture prominently in all of their marketing because they understand that's what you're really buying here. Do you trust them? Do you believe them? Do you think they're knowledgeable? That's all attributes connected to the personality, not necessarily to the business. So in your world, you need to be thinking, how can I inject myself and my personality into the business? Well, there's a couple of ways in which you can do it. So let's go to the board and make some quick suggestions here. I am a huge fan in today's visual world of including your picture in all of your marketing. People are going to have to see you at some point, so why not let them see you up front? And when it comes to that point, please let's set some pretty clear rules here. No glamour photography, no photos that were taken 40 years ago. So many of the pictures we see in marketing really should have the little caption, not exactly as illustrated, or artist conception, because they look nothing like the person looks now. And think of how that's going to play out. Sure, get a glamour photo or a photo when you were 18 and put it out there. Absolutely. And then go ahead and show up on the buyer's doorstep when you're 10 years older and you look very different. What kind of reaction do you think you're going to trigger from that buyer? And if you remember from what we started with in this entire module, the emotional response is key to your brand. Well, if you show them a picture and then you show up looking very different from that picture, I hope you can understand the emotional response is not going to be pleasant. So if it's a picture, make sure it's up to date and make sure it's not photoshopped too much like all the magazine covers. Another way many businesses do it is that they'll actually name their business after themselves, or they'll put their own name right into the business. Sometimes this can make you sound small, and that's not always a bad thing, particularly if you're in a personal service type of business. But there are some tricks you can play in using your name, and we'll just give you a quick little example here. You could be Billy Smith Bookkeeping, as an example. And I would suggest people seeing or hearing that name immediately conjure in their mind, oh, small little business, the guy probably works out of a basement or a bedroom in his home. They're probably not associating it with high quality, and therefore they're not associating with it, gee, I should pay this guy a lot of money. Probably not. But there's some other ways around this. You can do it this way, but you might use your initials, B.D. Smith Bookkeeping, as an example. Still injects your personality into your branding, but look at the difference. Doesn't this conjure up a different type of business than this does? It's just a simple mind trick more than anything else. And there's another way you can do it as well, and you'll see a lot of small businesses do this. They'll add words like group or and associate, simply because it still injects their personality into it, but by adding group or and associates, it makes the business sound bigger. So there's lots of little tricks you can use, mental mind games, if nothing else, which is largely what marketing is about, to make sure that they get you out of the business. The other thing I suggest that you can consider in putting your name or brand together around you is to make sure, as we said earlier, that you are very consistent with it. So if you're ever going to change the picture you're using in marketing, change it throughout everything. Charlie's got business cards now, the realtor we just showed you a few moments ago. Charlie looks a little different than in the business card I showed you because, like the rest of us, Charlie's gotten a little bit older. Charlie understands marketing, so his real estate business card now has an up-to-date picture. His website has an up-to-date picture. All the vehicle signs and bench signs, they all have the up-to-date picture. He is consistently delivering the image. That's very, very important. So in your world, then, let's put you to work. Under point number 4, reflecting your personality, what kind of tactics could you use to put you into your business front and center? Please hit pause now and jot some ideas on the handout under point number 4. Coming back in 3, 2, and 1. We've now got the 4 major points that every small business needs to keep in mind in creating its brand. These are now jotted down in our handout, and a reminder, they are ideas at this stage. Doesn't mean you're committed to them. It means you need to research them to help flesh them out a little bit further. To continue then, we're going to keep those ideas in the back of our mind, and one of the first tools that we're actually going to work on creating in this module now appears. And here in the handout on page 2, you're going to see midway down the page the tools of branding, and the first one we'll deal with is your positioning statement. Now, some people call this an elevator pitch. Some people call it a positioning statement. Some people call it a brand statement. There's a lot of different names, and I don't care if you ever use a name for it, because your buyers, I promise, will never once ask you, so what's your positioning statement anyway? Don't worry about what it's called. Worry about what it does. And the goal of a positioning statement is to summarize the 4 key points that we've just now created so far in this module to try to get all that information into the minds of the buyers we're pursuing. A positioning statement, ideally, is no more than 2 sentences that sums up the points we've just talked about. So here in the handout, you'll see them. We're going to kind of combine a few of them as we go through it. Point A is who you are, and that's going to be your business name needs to be in this statement if you want people to know who your business is. Lots of people, when they introduce themselves to potential buyers, say, "Hi, I'm Gord." And you see, the problem with that is the buyer has no idea who Gord is, has no idea what business Gord is attached to. So in your world, you need to start introducing yourself as, "Hi, I'm Sally Smith of FD Smith Bookkeeping here in Victoria," as an example. Put your business name front and center in this thing. You also want to be able to explain very quickly what it is you sell, and as points B and C illustrate, who do you sell to and what benefit do these buyers gain? And finally, why ultimately should they buy from you? What makes you different from the competition? So in each of these points, we've done a little bit of work so far in the module. So on your time, I recommend you come back particularly to this section and start moving some of the points as you get more information. Once you've done some research so you know what makes you different, so you know what your brand is going to be, then revisit this and start slotting things in. For now, I think you can begin to do some of that work. So go through the points exactly as you see them there. Don't worry about the wording for now. Just get the information jotted down there. So please hit pause and fill out points A, B, and C here at the bottom of the handout, page 2. Coming back in 3, 2, and 1. Now that you've got some of the points jotted down that you would like to cover in your positioning statement, we can begin to see how we can put it all together. So let's move on in the handout onto the top of page 3, where it asks you about your positioning statement. See that white space? The challenge in front of you now is to try to summarize the points you made on the previous pages, A, B, and C, and try to put them into English. Let's say that you're meeting someone face-to-face. What would you say? What would the exact wording be? Please take that as your challenge and hit pause now and spend a little bit of time trying to combine the points into the beginnings of a positioning statement. Coming back in 3, 2, and 1. You may now have a rough draft of a positioning statement, and please don't panic, don't pressure yourself to get it all right or perfect right now. We need more research, more information with this, and we really need the ideas to gel a little bit more. This is so important. This is something that you should be perking on for a few days or a few weeks, and once your business idea is fully rounded out, then and only then should you come back and try to complete your positioning statement. If your business plan isn't complete yet, that means you don't know precisely what it is you're going to sell and how much you're going to charge and who you're going to market to and how you're going to market and all the other elements. Once all those pieces are in place, it becomes much easier to summarize it all in a positioning statement. So what I'm going to recommend is a new tool here that's got nothing to do with branding. It's all about you and getting your work done. I'm a big fan as an entrepreneur of creating to-do lists. And so for this point, I would urge you to get a separate sheet of paper and put a big headline at the top, My To-Do List. And keep it handy throughout this module because we're going to revisit it, and I'm going to suggest you add a few more tasks to it as we go. The first task I'm going to suggest you put on your list is to revise or draft your positioning statement. Just so it doesn't get forgotten. I know right now it's very fresh because you're watching this right now. But in a week or so, when you've done a lot more work, I'm not sure this one's going to jump to the top of the plate. If you have it on your to-do list, you can revisit the list in a week or so, and I bet you'll go, oh, that's right, I better go back and look at my notes on that and see what I can come up with. That's the to-do list. What we also now want to talk about then, still here on the handout on page 3, midway down you'll see the heading, where to use it. Because the question I get asked a lot is, well, what's a positioning statement for? Where would I ever use this thing? Well, let's walk you through some very basic ways in which you'll use it, and I trust, as we do it, you'll understand the true value of this thing. One of the best things you can do with this is to put it on your website and your Facebook page. Think about it. 2 sentences or less that summarize the most important things buyers want to know. Who are you? What do you sell? Do you sell to people like me? What is it you sell to people like me? And why should I buy from you? If we can summarize that in 2 sentences or less, we have the ideal tool for the home page of our website and for Facebook. We can also use the similar statement in any kind of networking we do. You're going to get asked a lot, and maybe you already have been asked, oh, so what do you do anyway? And that's where a lot of us stumble and bumble and take 12 minutes and not really get out the key points that we want to. Well, when someone asks you, so what is it you do? I hope that's your cue to launch into your positioning statement. It's key information. It's not designed to get them to buy. It's designed to get them to understand and to create or begin to create our brand. That's its sole purpose. What often happens in verbal networking, when you're face-to-face with someone and you finish your positioning statement, they will often ask you questions, and that opens the door to fill in a lot more detail. That's really what's most valuable about this kind of thing. The other place that it can be used, though not exactly as 2 sentences, is on your business cards. And by that I again say, don't write the 2 sentences on your business card, not at all, but make sure that the key points of your positioning statement are indeed reflected on your business cards, presuming you're using them. Is your name on there, personal name, full personal name? Is the full business name on there? Is some description on there of what it is you sell? Is there some description there of the benefits buyers gain from using your stuff? And is there any indication on your business card as to why they should choose you? What is it that makes you different from everybody else? All of those elements need to be reflected on the business card too. So by starting with this in our module today, we've got a lot of the keys in place that we can then use in a lot of other marketing tools. Moving on then, the next marketing tool that we want to introduce is here on page 3 in the handout, your logo or word mark. And for this one, well, let's go to the slide so I can first illustrate what exactly it is we're talking about. So you're now seeing examples of what logos and word marks are. For most people, they're interchangeable. For marketing purists, they're actually 2 slightly different things. I'm not a purist. I don't care what you call them, because your buyers don't care what you call them. All I care is that you get the points behind them. A logo traditionally is a visual representation of the brand. It usually always includes the business name and some visual suggestion of what is the heart of the business. A word mark, to distinguish itself, is typically stylized lettering that is the business name. It may be accompanied by some other visual, but the name of the business itself is in a certain typeface. So here on screen you'll see on one side under logo you'll see ones you'll recognize, YouTube, Google, Ask, all these other ones, Walmart's there as well. These are all logos, even though some of them are also word marks. They're very familiar to you because they've been used over and over again. On the other side of the screen is probably the world's most famous word mark, and that's Coca-Cola, stylized type. When you see even just the letter C anywhere, I bet you connect it to Coca-Cola. That's how powerful its word mark is. So those are some examples, and again, who really cares that there's a distinction between them? You can choose one or the other, and it's not, according to any research, going to make any difference. What does make a difference is what you choose to represent by your logo or your typeface. And to do that, then let's go through some slides to show you what we're talking about. On to our point number 5 for the day. Up on screen, you'll see the Baskin-Robbins logo. This is an ice cream shop. Now, this logo is in color, and it's actually one that I always think is a bit too clever for its own good, but it is very, very clever. To really get why it's clever, you have to understand the origins. Baskin-Robbins came about back when we didn't have a lot of ice cream shops, and if we did, they had the good old reliable vanilla, chocolate, strawberry, that's it. But if you're looking at the logo here of Baskin-Robbins, you're going to see how they told the world from day one what made them different. And you have to look very carefully to see it. Baskin-Robbins offered from day one 31 different flavors of ice cream. The number 31 is in their logo. Can you find it? At some point, it's almost like that little Where's Waldo game, but the 31 is there in the initials B and R. If you notice in the pink pieces, just try to focus your eyes on those, and you will see clearly the number 31. Now that you know it's there, it probably jumps out at you. So what Baskin-Robbins did was very distinct at the time, but maybe a little bit too clever, I think, for the average person out there. So if we can just click the point on it, we'll give you the point that goes with this logo on the slide. Let's go ahead with the next point, please. And that is to suggest to you that, like Baskin-Robbins, whatever the logo or word mark you're choosing, it's got to be distinct. This logo, Baskin-Robbins chose because it was very different looking than all the other ice cream shops out there, and then they tried to be clever as well. I'm not the world's biggest fan of clever because basically I'm not clever, as you probably can tell. I prefer being distinct, standing out from everybody else. At the time, they accomplished that, so I would say this logo worked for it. Let's carry on with our slides, and as we do that in your handout, let's move you on to the top of page 4, but we'll stick with the slides for a moment, because the next logo is probably also one you're very familiar with, FedEx, the courier service. Now, this one is, to most people, very simple, very stripped down. And I, like most people, say exactly that, which is why this is one of the most recognized brand images on planet Earth. It's because it's so simple that it works so effectively. So please use this as an example to not get carried away. You may have an artistic background. Your designer who's doing your logo or word mark, they're going to be very creative. But you know, putting in all these subtle shadings and fine lines and additional colors just because you can, sometimes defeats the purpose. Look at FedEx. 2 colors, 2 words, even abbreviated words, basically. That's it. And it's very, very striking. Now, there's also a piece, while you have it still in your screens, that I want you to look closely for. In this logo, do you see the arrow? Another Where's Waldo thing. There is an arrow. If you look at the white space between the E and the X, if you look very closely at that, you will see that white space is in the shape of an arrow. The arrow connects moving forward and motion. FedEx is always in motion, always delivering things. Again, way too clever by half. Whoever would pick that up? And even if they did, would it really strengthen the brand? I doubt it. It's just kind of a nicety that's also built into this thing. So let's give you the point around this logo, point number 6. Let's click on our slide and suggest that your job in creating your logo or word mark is to remember, simple sells. People get it. If nothing else, think of the Nike swoosh. That is, by all research, the most recognized brand image on Earth. And all it is a simple swoosh. No fancy colors, no fancy lines, nada. Let's move on, sticking with our slides so you can fill in the next point as we get to it. We want to suggest that as you're creating your logo, and this is a problem particularly if you work with designers, but it can be your problem too, the size of your logo certainly matters a lot. And so when you're creating it, my suggestion to you is don't make it fill a page or a computer screen as you're designing it. Instead, design it to fit the smallest space it would ever be filling. I always come down to a business card. Most logos on business cards are barely bigger than a postage stamp. So when your designer is doing your logo or word mark, or you are, start there. Because if you can come up with a design that works effectively that small, think how eye-catching it's going to be when you blow it up and put it on the side of your panel van. But you see, the reverse is rarely true. Paint it on your panel van first, 8 feet by 8 feet. It's going to look amazing with all these different colors and words blended in. But when you have to shrink that down to fit it on your business card or a web page that's going to be viewed mobile, people are going to see just a blot of colors. They're not going to get the brand image you're trying to convey. So be careful with that one. And our final point about it, again, from a marketing perspective, carrying on with our slides, let's put the last point here and suggest that I understand clip art is cheap and easy to get at. There's lots of photos available on the internet, absolutely. But the problem with using any of them is that right away now, anybody else could use it too. And how then does that make you different? You may find a great image on the internet and say, that's the one I'm going to use, let's do it. But what happens if your closest competitor also finds that on the web and decides, hey, I'll use that too, let's confuse the heck out of everybody? Or what happens if an awful business, your exact opposite, decides that it's going to use it? That could complicate things for you, and you really don't want that to happen. So do know there's copyright on a lot of internet stuff, and it's not different enough. I truly believe it is worth investing limited dollars in an artist, a designer, somebody who can create original artwork for you. And there's lots of choices, lots of places in which you can get this done. So let's go back to the board for a second, and we'll give you some suggestions on where you can look to get some help in creating your own logos here. One great website that's out there is 99designs.com. Pay it a visit. Really cool site. This one gets professional designers around the world to bid on your job. And to use it, dead simple. You go to the website, you register, you post what it is you're looking for, a quick description of your business, and I need a logo for this, or I need a word mark, or I need whatever I need. And then within usually 48 to 72 hours, you begin to receive some quotes from professional designers around the world saying, hey, I'll do it for you for this much, and they'll all at some point provide you with a spec, an idea, a visual drawing of what they're thinking of using. And you can hash it back and forth with them to get to the final version. But they quote you a price, and they stick to it. It's pretty useful. There's lots of other sites. The one I point out, because a lot of small business owners I know use it, is Vistaprint. This is an online printer, but they also have a graphic sideline, and the rates are actually pretty reasonable. The artwork they come up with, I wouldn't say it's going to win necessarily any awards, but it's very functional, and I've seen some pretty good brand imagery come out of them for very little dollars. More than anything, I guess, I'm not endorsing them, I'm just saying, hey, they're out there. Google something, logo designs, plug in your local area if you want somebody local, leave out a geographical reference if you don't care where these people are, and get a bunch of different ideas before you settle on the one. Ultimately, what it comes down to around a logo or a word mark, always test. See, in developing a brand, it's so easy for us to fall in love with it because it's what we like. But will our audience respond to it the way we like? That's the key here. So in going through all the points here and you're coming up with a logo or word mark, professionally designed or otherwise, before you say, that's it, I got it, let's print, I encourage you to take it out in the marketplace and get some feedback. Not from your family and friends who are going to feel compelled to tell you, because they know how important this is to you, oh, this is great, yeah, I love it. And then once you're out of earshot, they start laughing about how terrible it was. Try to test it on some potential buyers. Look at what your competitors do. Put this up against it. Is it definitely different than what everybody else is using? Those are simple things, but we need to do them to make sure this is effective. So one more thing then that I'll suggest we can add to our to-do list based on this module is to start jotting down some ideas for a logo. Remember the brand words you came up with or at the beginning of this module? They're on page 1 of your handout. Those might be the kind of words that you want to be reviewing. Let's say you wanted the emotional response to be passion. You really wanted people to get committed to this because they loved it. Well, you're going to need some kind of a logo then that inspires passion. And maybe it's going to use red as an example, the color of passion. When you can think of the ideas, you can help yourself and or the designer create them visually. And that's very, very important. Coming back in 3, oh, better not, hang on a sec. Now we're coming back in 3, 2, and 1. The next piece that we'll tackle in our branding puzzle in this module for marketing is on the top of page 5 in your handout, where we're going to start talking about a thing called a tagline. It is a marketing tool, and it's very, very useful. Now, like anything in marketing, there's no law that says thou shalt have one. You don't have to, it's optional. But there is a rule in marketing that says never miss an opportunity to get your message out. And that's what a tagline is. It's an opportunity to get more information in the hands of our buyers. So if you're at the top of page 5 of the handout, then you'll see, as we say, the taglines are, when used, and I recommend they should always, when used, you'll see them in addition to a logo and or a word mark. Think of them as the next piece that completes the puzzle. Word mark, logo should be able to stand on its own, but accompanied by a tagline, there's a chance for buyers to go, oh, yeah, now I really get it. And that's invaluable to us. So taglines are words, phrases, sometimes sentences, though pretty rare, that really help fill in the blanks. And there's generally 2 types of them that we can play with. And you'll see them here on the handout, top of page 5. The first type of a tagline is known as a functional one. And this one is used to explain what you do. Because let's face it, sometimes our business names don't really give a clue to anybody. When Apple was first created, if they simply said Apple, who would have known what that was? People might have presumed they were buying fruit or God knows what. Maybe if you're old and remember the Beatles, they might have thought of Apple days way back then, that was their record label. But in today's world, they've got a chance you've got a chance, I should say, to distinguish yourself in their minds from everybody else. If your business name is catchy but doesn't explain what you do, you want to pair it with a functional tagline that helps round out the picture. The example we give you there in the handout, you'll see CNET, very well-known website among the tech world. If you're looking for downloads of reputable stuff, I do recommend CNET, by the way. But if they simply said, hey, we're CNET, most people wouldn't have a clue. So the tagline they have used is the source for computing and technology. You see the CNET logo, you see those words accompanying it, now you get it. Oh, I know what CNET does. That's an example of a functional tagline. Again, if your name isn't dead clear about what you do, you probably want to start with a functional one. The second type of tagline is always more powerful, an emotional tagline. This can really punch people's buttons. And that's a really good thing in marketing. If your name is very clear and distinct as to what you do, then I always say, make sure your tagline hits the emotional part of the purchase, what it is they get, what they really want here. That can be very powerful. But that doesn't mean you can't use it if your name isn't distinct. The example we offer you is Subway. When they first launched, sure they're a big national chain now, but when they first opened, one Subway store, what the heck was that? Was that a transportation device? But Subway has always said, you know what? Eat fresh, which conveys it's going to be fresh whatever it is you buy here. They didn't say we sell sandwiches that are fresh. They didn't worry about that. They said, we want you to feel that you're going to get fresh when you come into our stores. It worked very, very effectively. So you can use an emotional tagline if your name is distinct or if your name isn't distinct. That's fine. It just has to make sense not to us, the owner, but to them, the buyer. That's the real key here. So in putting it together here on this handout, page 5, you'll see the next heading down says, My Proposed Name and Tagline. Here's the work you're now to do. Please jot down in that space the name or names you are thinking of, and then start to jot down some ideas for a tagline that could be used to accompany that name or the names you're thinking of. A quick hint, you might want to go back to page 1 of your handout and look at the words you wrote at the very top under My Brand, and maybe you want to bring some of those words here to see if you can use them. That's your job. Hit pause and get to it. We'll be doing stuff on the board when we come back tomorrow, so we're okay with that. Coming back in 3, 2, and 1. Now that we have some ideas for names and taglines, and again, as with everything else in this module, you are not committed to it, you are just exploring it. You need more information before you settle on anything here. Let's apply a simple test. Choose any name tagline combination that you now have here on page 5 and run it through the tests at the bottom of page 5 on your handout. I'll walk you through them. The name and tagline that you're thinking of using together, do either one of them make it clear the tangible things that you sell? If your buyers only saw your name and that tagline, would they be able to understand, oh yeah, okay, I buy makeup there or I buy hairstyles there? Those are just examples. The second thing that your name tagline combination needs to cover off is the benefits that buyers gain. Does your name suggest that? If not, the tagline better. What's the intangible benefits? What do they really want that they're going to get by using this stuff? Other things the combination can, but not necessarily have to, cover off. Things like your target market. If your audience saw or heard the business name and tagline, would they recognize that they're part of the target market? Some businesses will say serving Nanaimo as an example. And so if I live in Nanaimo and I see that, I know that I'm part of the potential market there. They're local. Oh, okay. That can be an advantage. What about your business brand? If you wanted to be known as cool, believe it or not, you often have to say it. It's not the old propaganda theory where if you say it often enough, people will ultimately believe it. We're not going there, though we're on the edge of that, I will confess. But we are saying, consistently telling people, hey, we're cool. Oh, us, we're cool. We're the cool guys. Unlike everybody else, we're cool. That's what you have to do because your audience, frankly, is not paying attention. Say it once, they'll never remember it. Say it twice, they'll never remember it. Say it 3 times, they probably will not remember it. Say it 4 times, maybe it's beginning to stick. But in marketing, you'll probably find you need to repeat it 5 to 7 times to have any chance whatsoever of it sticking in their mental file cabinets in the brain. So get used to repeating it a lot. And ultimately, does your name tagline combination provide any suggestion of what it is that makes you unique? And that's critical, as we've talked about, because this answers the question buyers have, well, why should I buy from you? There's 28 others out there like you, aren't there? Well, actually, we're the only one, and now you can spiel out from there. So that's a test that I encourage you to use, and we're going to say you should add this to your to-do list. You should start drafting some ideas for a name and tagline combination. Try not to create one without also thinking of the other, because it can be really difficult. But here's the switch that can really mess things up for a lot of us. The name is, in marketing terms, the foundation. It's like the foundation of a house. Everything is going to be built on it, so it better be sturdy, and it better not change often. But taglines, they're more flexible. They're like a wall in the house. It can be moved here, it can be moved over there, it can be cut down half the size as need be over time. This is not like a headline that you change every week, but you may find after a couple of years you've outgrown the tagline or you've added new things to your business so the tagline doesn't summarize everything anymore. You do have permission in marketing to change your tagline periodically. So don't lock into a name tagline combo and say, there, I have to use that for the rest of my days. That's not true, not even close. We'll go to some slides for the next piece. In a minute. Oh, actually, sorry, I have to do something on the board first, and then we'll go to slides. I'm sorry. Coming back in 3, 2, and 1. The next branding tool that we'll talk about in this module is the business card. And here in your handout, we are at the top of page 6. And we want to introduce a business card with a simple concept. The name says it all. It is a business card, meaning it is geared or should be geared to helping you get some business. There is a big difference between a business card and a contact card. And so many business owners don't get it. A contact card is useless. For a brand new business, if you've never dealt with me before and I've met you once and you leave me with your business card and it gives me your name and contact information, why am I ever going to use that? I've only met you once. Unless you wowed me, this is going to disappear. But a business card, well now, that's a whole different story because it's going to give me more information, and it's going to be information that when I look at it, I'm going to remember you, even though I've only met you once. So that's the big difference between the two, and we're going to show you some examples in a minute about that. But first, let's deal with what is this magic information that distinguishes a business card from a contact card. Well, here on page 6, if you want to fill in any of the blanks, here's what we're going to give you. There is information that absolutely must be on your business card. No question about it. I trust, this isn't too big a shock, that the name has to be on the card and prominent. But let me be clear here. You need to make sure the business name is there and understood. So be careful of fancy type or really small type. If people can't read it, they won't. But also, keep in mind what we said earlier about brand. Injecting you into it, your personal name, your full name, first and last, don't need your initial unless you really want it, should be on this business card as well. Because people will contact people long before they will contact businesses. So if your business card just gives them a business name and phone number, it leaves the buyer in the awkward spot of dialing the number and saying, I'm kind of interested in buying something. Who do I talk to? Versus seeing your name here, Jane Smith. Hi, is Jane there, please? Much more natural thing for buyers to connect with. Also on here has to be some kind of branding. Now, this again can be covered off by your logo and tagline, absolutely. It can be covered off in the visual element. Maybe there's something really edgy about your business, therefore your business card should be edgy. Maybe it's got ragged edges, maybe it's got a rough surface, maybe it's all black with some white lettering tucked in a variety of surprising places. Something that conveys the brand. We're edgy around here. You really want to convey that as best you can. And you know what? Yes, we do want to provide contact info, but be careful here. We want to make sure that we only give them the most relevant information. You know, this is challenging in today's world, very challenging because there's so many channels we can offer to people. They can email us, they can phone us, they can fax us, they can text us, they can leave a note on Facebook, they can use Instagram, Snapchat, all these tools out there. And when you go on the web, you'll see all these icons listed all the time. Yeah, you can do that on your business card, but here's where I'm, as a marketer, saying, you know what, the more you hit your buyers with, the less likely anything is to jump out at them. So my strong recommendation is to try to steer them to the way, the contact that you want them to contact you. So if you're not into email, well, okay, but they may well be. I don't think you should list all your social media. I think you should list the ones that you use the most often to communicate with buyers and try to steer them to that channel. If you're posting on Facebook 2 and 3 times a day, give them your Facebook info. Try to get them to go there because in contacting you, they'll see all the stuff you're posting. Maybe they'll follow you, so they're going to get it automatically. That would be even better. So be careful about giving them a grocery list of options. Try to steer them as best you can, as gently as you can. Hey, if you have a website or Facebook, you're going to list all the other options there anyway, so they will be able to find them without too much trouble. So that's the stuff that most people are pretty good at, but there's one other piece that I really strongly push hard on as an essential piece of your business card. And for this one, I'm going to go back to that acronym we introduced earlier in this module, WIIFM. Does your business card tell the buyer what's in it for me? Because you see, that's a key part of getting the business, isn't it? If your card simply says who you are and what you sell, it's not telling me why I should buy from you. Well, what's in it for me? You sell computer parts, big deal. But if you instead tell me, hey, I can make your game run twice as fast, well, now I'm paying attention. I'll call you or email you, whatever, to find out more. So the marketing element, what's in it for me, needs to be on your business card. And again, it could be reflected in any number of ways that we've already shown you, but it needs to be there. It absolutely has to be. Outside of that, I would say just about everything else that you can think of for a business card is optional. So don't get too carried away and clutter the whole thing up, particularly because there's a couple of things that I would throw in there. If I could run the world, I would deem these absolutely essential, but they won't let me run the world, so I have to behave. I am a big fan, as we said earlier in the modules, of putting your picture on the business card, especially if your only other option is some awful clip art or a picture you've lifted off the web that means nothing. People say, oh, well, it's a metaphor. Yeah, well, your buyers don't like metaphors. They don't get them. They don't connect with them. But your face, I promise you they will connect. They really, really will. People, interesting studies prove this, remember faces far more than they remember objects. So use your picture. The other advantage, by the way, is if you're out in your community and lots of people have had your business card, they may actually recognize you. And that's an advantage that every brand creator would kill to have. So picture is a big thing. The other element that I think is necessary in today's world is some suggestion about the area that you can serve. And see, here's where being on the web is a real problem. If you're a service provider, that means you have to go to people to do your stuff. But if your marketing only lists a website, God knows who's going to find you. It could be somebody in Singapore. And how does that help you getting their eyeballs on your website? Or worse yet, with them emailing saying, hey, can you be here tomorrow? So the stronger your web presence is as a service provider, the more I'm leaning to saying, you know what, you should specify serving Vancouver Island or something, so that when the people in Singapore find you, they just click on to the next one and nobody's time gets wasted. It's obviously not a law, but it is something I encourage you to think about. So having said that, then let's show you some examples of business cards, and to do that we'll need to go on some slides. We have printed the cards here in the handout, so you can stick with those as you look at them on screen in color, if that helps you. So the first example you'll see is from Patricia Torrey, Nutrition Consultant. Now, this was a client who started a small business quite a few years ago, and this was her first draft of her business card. We had gone through some of the points that you now have through this module with her, and this is what she came up with. So as you look at the cards, think of to yourself, what's your impression of this business? If you could only describe it in one or two words, what would those one or two words be? My hunch is none of those words would be, I want it. This is a card that, like every first draft, needs a lot of work. So I'm not ripping apart what has been done here. I'm saying this is a really good start, but this is not even close to the finish. So let's go through some of the things that you're seeing here, and let's see if you're viewing it like a marketer would view this. First off, you'll see the name of the business is prominent, Patricia Torrey Nutrition Consulting. Good on her. She has chosen, however, a shadow type on color, and you can see, I trust on the screen you're looking at, it looks a little bit blurry when you do that. If you remember the FedEx logo, nice and crisp and easy, no shadows, no underlines, no outlines. Don't use those tricks, you don't need them. But here's the confusing part from a marketing perspective. See the name of the business? Now look for the name of the proprietor on this card. Did you see it? Down at the left-hand side under the photo, and there it says Pat Torrey, and the business is Patricia Torrey. Now, a small point perhaps, but think of it from a buyer's standpoint. Patricia Torrey sounds a bit more impressive, like this business has credentials behind it. Pat Torrey sounds a lot more approachable. This is where the business owner, we advise Pat, had to decide what was her brand. Did she want to be seen as the friendly, approachable nutritionist, or did she want to be seen as the nutritionist who knows her stuff? And the problem with that one was that a lot of people perceived that meant stern and lecturing. Oh no, she knows her stuff. She's going to tell me I can't eat those 4 bags of chips. I don't want to deal with that. I want a friendly nutritionist. So what ultimately evolved from this one is the business became Pat Torrey Nutrition Consulting. She chose a friendlier way to brand herself, and that worked pretty well. While we have you looking at her name, please look at her credentials. I'm not sure anybody understands what a BHSC is or an RH. Take a minute if you want, hit pause, Google them, and then you'll find out, but I'll spare you that little challenge. A BSH is a Bachelor of Health Science, so it is related to what she does, and therefore it should have been spelled out. If she felt it was important enough to her clients, she should make sure they understood it. Her defense was, but all nutritionists know what this is, and we had to point out, but nutritionists aren't going to buy your services, are they? It's going to be yuppers like me who need to eat better, and I didn't have a clue what that was until she told me. But once she tells people what it means, their eyes light up. Oh, I guess you do know your stuff. So spell it out. RH was a curious one. I'd never ever run across this one. That actually stands for Registered Herbologist. You can actually get a title, a certification, to be a specialist in herbs, which again would be related and could be used spelled out on the card. Absolutely. Some other things. Well, the visual. Let's look first at her picture. And remember what we said earlier about using your picture but making it lifelike? This is a studio shot. How many times in your real life have you ever posed like this, other than when somebody was pointing a camera at you and saying, here, lean on your chin, lean forward? It's not natural. People don't do it. And Pat decided she wanted a friendly brand. So she wore casual clothes, but the hands in front of her chin did not convey friendliness. It conveyed staged, stiff. So the next version she did, she got rid of that photo, and it was a nice casual picture of her relaxing in the outdoors. Much friendlier. How about this other image? The bottom right of the card. Can you figure out what that thing is? Well, you're smarter than me if you did, because I couldn't. And even when she told me what it was, I struggled with it. This was out of the Canada Food Guide, and it's what they call the rainbow. And by they, I mean nutritionists. In the Canada Food Guide, they use this thing as their visual. And not that I'd ever encourage you, but if you wanted to take a magnifying glass to it, you'd see that one of the rows or arcs is all fruits and vegetables. It's foodstuffs. But this became a classic case of inside stories. She knew what it meant. She knew what it conveyed, but not a single one of her buyers had a clue. Some people thought it was a rainbow. Some people thought it was a mandala. Some people just said, what is that thing anyway? It was a case of a visual that didn't work. So, pull it. And the card didn't miss a trick when we pulled it. So let's finish up here by looking at the name in concert with the tagline. Health begins with the food you eat was a relatively strong tagline. We thought it conveyed that, hey, eat better, you're going to feel better. So it got some of the emotion into it. It then also went on to describe what it is she sells. So it covered off a lot of the points that should be there. I hope you're seeing through this critique that they all could be improved with just some minor tweaks to be so much stronger. So for first effort, hey, not bad at all. Let's move on to the next slide, the next example that we can give you. And this one was done by a professional designer. So take a moment, look at your screen very closely if you can, because some of the type is pretty small. And then I'm going to walk you through some of the points around this one. And again, remember, a professional designer did this one. I'm not picking on the business. I'm not picking on the designer. I'm just going to state my opinion bluntly. Designers are brilliant graphical people, but unless they have a marketing background, they are great at drawing pretty pictures. If you're going to use a designer, you get one, please, that has a marketing background so that they will come up with the marketing points, and then they will use pretty pictures that convey the marketing points. This one had all kinds of trouble when we tested it with this client from years ago. We tested it in the classroom at the time, and this was some of the feedback that she got. The visual, most people in the room agreed, was striking. Those eyes, wow, they really captured it. But the problem most people in the room had with it was that they said, without reading anything, I assumed this was an optician, this was an eyeglass place, or, and some ladies in the room said, I thought this might have been for an escort service, which was kind of interesting. That one didn't come to me, and usually that stuff comes to me before anybody else. So I was kind of impressed that someone else thought that way too. But nobody connected it to interior design. And so the designer had explained to the client, well, that's what the swatches are for. See those things in the top left? Those are fabric swatches. Really, says everybody in the room. You would have had to tell me that 100 times before I ever would have got it. It just didn't connect. Then some other problems were created here as well. Look at the name of the business and look at the logo. What do you think the name of this business is? The majority of the people in the room when we tested said, oh, well, it's called Designing Spaces. We have to say, it is not actually. The business name, believe it or not, is DS Designing Spaces. That's the legal name of it. But the designer chose to put DS as a logo, which unfortunately the letters stood for Designing Spaces in the eyes of everybody who saw it. So that caused some confusion immediately because most people said, at the time they used telephones, I would have to call the operator and ask for a number for Designing Spaces. And they never would have found it. So the logo became a problem. And then we look at the tagline. Let's steer you to that. Again, this was a tagline the designer apparently came up with, not the client, the owner of the business. Creating personal ambiance with quality service at a desirable budget. Every single person in the room, and there were many in the room who actually fit the market profile for this business, every single one of the people in that room said, I don't believe that tagline based on the look of the card. This card looks lush and rich and striking. I think this is high-end and it's going to cost me a lot of money. And it actually might be worth it. But then they said when I read, oh, quality on the desirable budget, that's not high-end. So the words didn't connect with the visuals and vice versa. The brand was inconsistent. The brand, therefore, didn't get created here. So you can see there's all kinds of problems with that, and I would go even further to say the problem is that the contact information, there's a ton of it, and it's all too small to be useful for anybody. I don't know, as a potential buyer, what I'm supposed to do. There's too much there. Remember earlier I said try to steer people where you want them? I suggested to this client, you know what, let's give them your cell phone number, let's give them your website. Because they can phone you quick and easy. They don't need to know if they're talking to you on your cell or your landline. And if they go to your website, they'll find your email right there now, won't they? We didn't need to put it there. So when she did a revised version, it was dramatically different. And I always say, you know what, this was first draft. It was just so strange that a design professional gave this to her and said, here you go, this is going to be great for your brand. It didn't fit her marketing whatsoever. Let's look at another example. In the handout we'll go as you next see the business card for a small home-based service provider who provides mobile services, obviously. He's an electrician. This one is very, very interesting to me as a marketer because it was so different than so many of the cards used by electricians at the time. Again, this was a new business, just getting started, limited resources. The owner had gone through some of the similar points that you're now going through in this module, and this was his first draft. So he came up with some pretty interesting stuff, I would suggest, but some of it became a problem, according to people in the room and from my marketing background. Here's some things that were effective. Number one, the guy's name is clear as day. He understood that when people are hiring an electrician, they're hiring someone to come into their home or their business, into their personal space, and therefore they need to know something about the person they're going to deal with. So he put his name up prominently. I like that for service providers particularly. He also put his license number, which is required, by the way, for electricians, but that also, even though we don't understand it, conveys a sense, oh, well, the guy must be legit. He's got a license to do this kind of thing. So that was very, very helpful. From a marketing perspective, I liked the name that he had for the business, Fusion Electric, because it was so very different. But I agreed with all the people in the room that I did not understand the visuals. People said, do you do solar installs? Is that why there's sunshine? And what's connecting the two suns anyway? And is this some kind of fusion thing? Don't you just fix lights and stuff? So it caused some problems. And the owner, upon hearing all that, said, you know, I see, you're right. I just won't do that. this was clip art. He kind of didn't have an idea what he could use, but he saw this would be different than anything else, so he said, well, I'll use this. But that's not how you build a brand. If you can't figure out a purpose for something, don't use it. Don't fill space, not at all. Some other things about this card. Well, from a branding perspective, here's my minor complaint about it. Look at the word fusion. See what they did with the I? Now, that's a brand element. That's a distinct element. It should have been done for a reason. Gerd said he didn't know why he did it. He just had a feeling to do it at the time. Okay. But my thought was, well, okay, if you're going to go with that, look at electric. That word has an I in it as well. So if the I in fusion was small, the I in electric should have been small, and then people would have got it. Oh, it's intentional. Oh, okay, that's different. Versus, well, should that be a small I? Why is that there? You never want people to ask questions about your brand. So that, I thought, might have improved it. What definitely would have improved it, and I trust you're seeing this too, think about his business. He's an electrician. So think about the work that he does and where he does it, right? He's mobile. He does it at your house, at your apartment, at your condo, wherever you live. So why is he giving me his address? No use to buyers whatsoever. If he wanted people to know that he serviced Nanaimo, he should have said that, servicing Nanaimo. But by providing his address, it didn't help the buyers whatsoever. In fact, it probably confused them. What's this here for? The other problem that I nailed poor Garrett on was the email address. Can you read it? It's garrett55@telus.net. Now, I'm a bit of an airhead. Things come out of my mouth as soon as I say them because I don't think carefully many, many times. But I blurted out as soon as I saw this, is that your dating site address? And who knew? I was right. Gerd confessed, a little red face bleed. Oh, yes, that's the one I've been using on Plenty of Fish or whatever site he was plugged into. Well, even he could chuckle about it. But from a business standpoint, from brand, having something that looks like a dating site address or anything that looks non-business-like, don't do it. Keep that for your dating address all you want, but the business address should have been garrett@fusionelectric.com or fusionelectric@telus.net. Some connection to the business would have been much, much appreciated. So keep this in mind. If you use Gmail or, God forbid, Hotmail or Yahoo or any of those ones, please don't just have your personal name. Put the business name there. You can buy it, so it could be your personal name at businessname.ca through Yahoo. You can do that. Or you can do it simply, businessname@yahoo.ca. Just some kind of business connection for branding purposes, please, would be very useful. Okay, so you've seen that. So let's go to some points that we can give you about this kind of stuff. And in the handout, we're on page, oh, no, I'm sorry, we're still on page 7 in the handout. I'll get it right yet. And Tamara's going to edit all that part out. So that's why you don't want to do this stuff live. Coming back in 3, 2, and 1. Our final example here on page 7 in the handout, and you're seeing it on screen, is by a landscaping firm. And here's my bias. I love this one to death, largely because it annoyed every single graphic designer I ever showed it to. They hated it, and I love ruffling their feathers, I really do. Don't know why, but that's just me. So let's go through why I actually loved it also from a marketing perspective. First off, I don't think you're having any trouble figuring out the name of this business. Secondly, I don't think you're having any trouble in figuring out the phone number to use to call this business. They made them big, big, big. And designers hated that. Oh, why is that so big? It's all out of proportion. It needs to be subtle. Come on, it doesn't look right. But we fended them all off, and marketing won the day. The card actually tells us why the name and phone number are so big. Take a moment to look at the card. The reason is there. If you read what's on the card, you'll get why they did this. Do you see the words Veterans Service Provider? You may not know what that is, but the word veterans probably connects you, like it does most people, with the elderly, because veterans do tend to be elderly these days. And one thing we do know about the majority of elderly people is that they struggle with eyesight. See why this is so big, the most important element? And the reason I fell in love with it is that it proved itself right. The ladies behind this business came back a few months later after starting and said, oh my God, we get so much feedback on our business cards. And in fact, they said, we get phone calls every week from people who say, honestly, this is what they were relaying, we get seniors calling us saying, I'm phoning you because I can actually read your phone number. I get so many of these cards where I just can't read it. It's frustrating. You obviously understand me. Why don't you come and pay me a visit? It got them a lot of work. So the designers were pressing them to change it, and they stuck to their guns saying, no, the market says it works. It's not art. It is a business card. And that's the point that I emphasized with them. So I think they did it very, very well, and they proved it, too, over the years. So having said that, then let's go through a couple of quick points for you, sticking with slides here for a couple of minutes, for things you should be considering when you're creating your own business card. So our next point then will come up, and it's our 9th point of this module about branding. Here we go. When you're creating your business cards, think about color. The stock of the business card, what color will it be, and the ink that you're going to use on your business card. Now, the simplest thing that research tells us is black type on a white or light background is the easiest thing for people to read, by far. So if you have a website or Facebook or anything where you're using colored type on a colored background, I hope you'll remember what we just said. Research proves people read the fastest with most comprehension and find it the easiest when it is black type on a white background. I grant you it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but very few people are going to go to any of your online sites for pretty. They're looking for information, and the easier you feed it to them, the better for your brand. However, lots of people want to use lots of colors, so we're giving you some listings here about the different kinds of color choices that are available. And the reason that we're providing this for you is so that you can understand there is a psychological association with color. The colors you choose subconsciously say certain things to your buyers. So rather than go through them all, you can read them there on the handout, and I'll just walk you through some very quick examples to show you how they play out in the real world. Red, as you know, I trust, is the color of strength and passion. People use red when they really want to stimulate their audiences. So one of the coolest examples I can provide for you is Coca-Cola. Corporate colors are red and black. And if you see there across on that handout, black is the color of sophistication and elegance. So when I tell people that Coca-Cola deliberately chose these two colors, they usually look at me puzzled. Well, what on earth is sophisticated about a drink that'll take rust off a spoon, for God's sake? But what really ties it together is the history. Way back when Coke was first coming up with its corporate colors, it was in the turn of the century, in the 1900s, there around. And at the time, Coke actually had the key ingredient of cocaine in its formula. That is true. Coke will tell you that as well on its website. But interestingly, at that time in our history in North America, cocaine was not a street drug. Cocaine was the drug of the elite. Only the sophisticates and those with money could afford to do Coke. And so Coca-Cola, recognizing the ingredient in its formula, recognizing the impact Coke had, it stimulates people, it gets them excited, and it targets the affluent, the wealthy sophisticates. That's why Coca-Cola, way back then, chose red and black. Kind of interesting, huh? To really disturb you, I guess I'll also very quickly share on the tangent the story of why Santa Claus is red and black. And I hate to disillusion you, but the reality is in North America, it's widely credited with coming from Coca-Cola. Around 1912, 1916, somewhere in there, the lead artist in Coca-Cola's art department was charged with coming up with a Christmas campaign to sell their pop. They had already chosen their colors, red and black, so they knew they were going to use red and black. And at that time in North America, we didn't really have a Santa Claus like we do now. Europe had St. Nicholas or Father Christmas. the more traditional ones from the stories from eons ago, but North America never really warmed to those. So as the story goes, the artist was a drunk. And as drunks get over time of abusing alcohol, his body shape began to change. He began to become pear-shaped with a big belly. His complexion became very ruddy. And as people who have abused alcohol for too many years often discover, the nose tends to get red as the capillaries in the nose get damaged. And in his explanation of why he came up with the campaign he did, he said he had struggled for some inspiration, he'd had a few drinks, he went to the washroom to splash some water on his face, and when he looked in the mirror, he saw his complexion. Ruddy, big bulbous red nose, big jowls and cheeks on him. He said, I stood back a little bit and I saw in the mirror my body shape, big belly. And that was his inspiration for what became today's version of Santa Claus. Big jolly red giant in a red black suit with white trim, big belly, big red bulbous nose. So when you sat on Santa's lap, you were paying homage to a drunk. Congratulations, just like all the rest of us. There's the story of Santa Claus. Sorry to ruin it for you. Some other of the color choices that you see there. When you look at banks, you will often see the color blue in their logo scheme because blue is the color of trust. Financial advisors will often use the color gold because it conveys prestige and luxury. And obviously the eco movement has co-opted green because psychologically people associate that color with freshness and nature, natural. So it made perfect sense. Let's see if you can make perfect sense with that brief information in front of you under the heading My Colors at the bottom of this handout, page 7. Please now hit pause and jot down your thoughts. What colors would you use to convey your brand? What colors would you use on your logo, on your business card, a backdrop on your website, all that kind of thing? Please hit pause, do the work. Carry on with a couple more slides. Tamara, coming back. 3, 2, and 1. You now should have some ideas of the colors you're thinking might help convey the brand. And again, remember, it's subconscious. People will associate certain things with your business simply by the colors that you choose. If you want to learn more, just Google color psychology and you'll get all the stuff, lots of research papers which will bore you senseless. But there's quite a few sites that explain it in very easy to understand language, and they show you it in application, which is always really valuable. What I'm going to show you then is moving on to the top of page 9 in your handout and a couple of more slides that will give you to help you further with the business cards that you're considering in your business. So here we go. The next point that we'll give, our 10th point of this module on branding, is that I do strongly recommend that your branding target your audience. So here specifically on a business card, the example of serving homeowners in the Cowichan Valley, if that's where you are, I think you need that kind of info. Your buyers appreciate it. Oh, they're local? Yeah, I'm in the Cowichan Valley. Maybe I should give these guys and girls a call. That can be really, really helpful. Again, it's not mandatory, but I do believe it's very, very helpful. The next slide that we'll give you, one more thing we want to talk about, which we have talked about earlier, but we really want to emphasize this. Even on your business cards, as our 11th point of this module, your business cards, like every other branding tool, must promote your benefits. And here's where a lot of business cards fall apart. You may have gathered some in your travels as a consumer. You may have gathered some of your competitors' business cards as part of your research for your new business. Take a moment when you have some time to look at those business cards and look to see, do they actually tell you what's in it for you as the buyer here? Do they answer the fundamental question, promoting intangible benefits, or do they simply, like too many cards, say, here's our name, here's our number, here's where we are, here's what we sell? That's a contact card. That's not a business card. A business card is a branding tool. A contact card is an information tool. They are separate things. We're drilling you as best we can to always think of your brand when you're creating these tools. And speaking of those tools, well, here on the bottom of page 9, we'll stay with that for a moment. When you do have a sketch of your business card as to what information you're going to put on it, please apply this test to it. See how many of the boxes you can cover off with your prototype business card. We're not saying thou shalt have all 5 boxes. I say, though, as a marketer, bare minimum, your business card covers at least 3 of the boxes, and that's tricky. 4 would be better, obviously, and 5 would be perfection, but I hardly ever see 5. I don't have 5 on my business card, so I wouldn't expect anybody else to, but I actually have seen some that pull it off. But your goal is to try to make sure 3 of these boxes get ticked on that card. And remember, when it comes to the business brand, sometimes it may just be the color you choose. It may have nothing to do with the words, but if you use blue, it may be a trustworthy association that you're creating. And you don't need to say the word we're trustworthy. You can just leave that out. But that's your goal. So on your to-do list, I would recommend that you add another piece, and that is to draft your business card and test it. Before you commit to it, take it out, show it to some potential buyers. Don't explain anything about it. Just say, would you mind having a look at this and tell me what comes to mind as you look at it? And then shut up. Do not influence them. Let them say what's on their mind. You might not even identify it as yours. You might say, hey, a friend is asking me to get some feedback. Would you have a look at this? That may encourage them to be a bit more honest and maybe blunt. If they think it's yours, they may not be as honest as you really need them to be, and that's never a good thing. So from there, let's move on to page 10 in the handout. The final module of our work today on branding is to suggest that there are 3 basic tests that you need to apply to any and all of the tools you create based on what we've gone through in this module. We're going to go through a couple of quick slides to give you the last 3 points, and we'll explain them. I have asked you throughout to test. Well, here's 3 tests that you can consider. It wouldn't be a bad idea to do all 3, but maybe you're going to choose your favorite and just stick with that. We shall see. So let's get into it. Our 12th point of the day, of our module I should say, and our first point of a test, is that all of the branding tools you create, from your positioning statement to your business card, to your logo, to your word mark, to your color scheme, you need to look at all of those as though you were the buyer, not the seller. I know you're in love with your business. I'm in love with mine. But you're the only one who's in love with your business. I'm the only one who loves mine. Everybody else could take it or leave it. So we need to take that kind of unbiased, almost disinterested perspective to see, are we really wowing them with this? Because like Apple being cool, they had to have the wow factor or their brand would not have stood out. So you can have a brand that's done effectively, or you can have a brand that's done ineffectively. The distinction usually is the effective brand is the one that jumps out at you. The buyer goes, whoa, that's speaking to me. I get that. I like that. There's something here. That's very, very important. So try to get away from, well, yeah, I've checked this box, I've checked that box, so I've done it right, and start thinking like, would this convince me to give up some of my hard-earned money? Because that's the key part of branding now, isn't it, to make sales. Our next point, our next test, we said this right at the beginning of our work on branding in this module. We'll say it again. Consistency matters. What matters here is that we deliver the same message and try to capture the same emotion on all of our marketing. So consistency, as I will explain it here in the point under 13, is that whatever you create should always be based on what you created before it. An example. Let's say that you have created a business card and it passes all the tests and you've got some wow to it. And now you're going to build your website. Well, have your business card in front of you as you start building the website to make sure you pick up the same color scheme, to make sure you pick up the key points and emphasize them throughout the website, to make sure that you remember that on the business card you deserve to be prominent, so on the website you deserve to be prominent. And do the same when you set up your Facebook page and when you set up Instagram and every other tool you're going to be using. Make sure that you are consistent with all of the other tools you have created. There's a real simple way of doing it. When you have all your stuff ready, print it all out and put it on a table and stand back 6 feet. At that distance, it's hard to read, but you'll notice color scheme, you'll notice headlines, big words, and you'll notice imagery. And you should, when you stand 6 feet away from all of your marketing, be able to say, yeah, that looks like it came from the same business. That's one brand, I get it. But if when you stand 6 feet away, you see something that's orange, something that's green, something that's black and white, something that doesn't even have a name on it, then you can understand, uh-oh, my brand isn't built yet. This is going to hurt my brand. I got to fix this before the public sees it. Finally, our 14th point in our module. We've talked a lot in marketing about making sure you're unique. Well, here's the ultimate way to test your uniqueness. Once you have any of these branding tools we've talked about in this module or any other marketing tool you've created, website, newspaper ad, flyer, whatever it might be, once you've got it ready, do this simple little test. Print it out, sit down with it, and every time your business name or your personal name appears in this material, cross it out and write in the name of a competitor. Every single time your name or your business name is there, get rid of it and put in the competitor's name. Then once you're done, reread the whole thing from start to finish. And if it makes sense, you are not unique. You are sounding exactly like a competitor, which means you need to go back and change some things. Something in the way you present your message has to apply only to your business, or you're going to get lost in the shuffle. The vast majority of businesses fail that test, and in my experience, the reason is because they don't give themselves the test. They just create and they put it out. And that's not what branding is all about. So that's it for the slides that we needed to show you at this point. What we can say then is now we have gone through the different points of branding from a small new business perspective. You don't need a lot of resources, but you need a lot of thought and information to make this thing work. So throughout this module, you have now got some assistance and ideas, we hope, on what your brand might be, how you express it, the tools that you can use to build the brand. You've got a chance, I hope, to come back and review the notes that you have created. You can certainly come back and review this module at any time. It's always going to be there online for you. Your business coaches will be happy to provide you with a lot of assistance with it. But I'll back you up to where we started. The brand begins with you. You have to think of what you want it to be, what is the emotional response you want it to create, what is the message or messages you will use to deliver it, and that will create the image you're aspiring to in the marketplace. You build a brand, it doesn't happen by itself. It certainly won't happen overnight, but if you complete all the items on the to-do list through this module, it'll start to build rather quickly. So on that note, I thank you for your time. I wish you success in branding your business, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the marketplace.